Everyone says your 20s are supposed to be the best years of your life. So why do they feel like walking through fog with a map that keeps changing, while everyone else pretends they know exactly where they're going? If your 20s feel confusing, heavy, and strangely disorienting, nothing is wrong. In fact, it might be exactly what's supposed to happen. Section 1. The lie of the clear path. For most of modern history, life followed a relatively predictable script. Finish school, get a job, build a family, stay in one place, repeat. The path was narrow, but it was visible. Today, that clarity is gone. In your 20s, there are more choices than any generation before. More careers, more lifestyles, more identities, more places to live, more ways to succeed, and more ways to feel like you're failing. Freedom expanded, but so did uncertainty. And the human brain, for all its intelligence, was never designed to comfortably handle unlimited options. When there are too many doors, the mind doesn't feel excited. It feels paralyzed. This is the first hidden reason your 20s feel confusing. You're not just choosing a path. You're choosing between thousands of possible lives. Every decision quietly closes off another version of who you could have been, and the weight of that is heavier than most people realize. Section 2. You're building an identity while the ground is moving. Your 20s are not just about careers or relationships. They are primarily about identity construction. Before this decade, most of your life was structured by external systems: parents, school, social expectations, geography. But in your 20s, something subtle and destabilizing happens. The training wheels come off. For the first time, the question becomes unavoidable. Who are you when nobody is telling you who to be? That question sounds empowering on the surface. In reality, it's deeply disorienting, because identity is not discovered in a single moment of clarity. It is built through friction, mistakes, and uncomfortable experimentation. You try careers that don't fit. You enter relationships that teach hard lessons. You adopt habits that later feel misaligned. And during this process, it often feels like you're moving backward instead of forward. But what feels like chaos is often construction happening in real time. Your 20s feel confusing because your sense of self is still under active development. And development rarely feels smooth from the inside. Section 3. The comparison trap has never been worse. There has never been a time in human history where people could so easily compare their lives to millions of others in real time. In previous generations, comparison was local. You compared yourself to neighbors, classmates, co-workers. Now, comparison is global and algorithmically amplified. Every scroll shows someone getting promoted, traveling the world, building a business, getting married, buying property, figuring life out. But what you're actually seeing is not reality. You're seeing highly curated highlight reels during a decade that is, for most people, deeply unstable behind the scenes. This creates a psychological distortion. Your messy middle gets compared to someone else's polished peak, and slowly, quietly, a dangerous narrative begins to form. Everyone else is moving forward, except me. But here is what often goes unseen. Most people in their 20s are improvising. They are guessing. They are pivoting. They are quietly doubting themselves far more than they admit publicly. The confusion you feel is not a personal failure. It is a shared but rarely spoken experience. Section 4. The pressure to use this time wisely. Your 20s come with a strange cultural contradiction. On one hand, you're told, these are the years to explore. But at the same time, you're constantly warned, don't fall behind. Build your career early. Invest now. Maximize your potential. Make the right moves while you're young. So the decade becomes psychologically loaded. Every choice starts to feel high stakes. Every year starts to feel like it matters more than it should. Every wrong turn starts to feel permanent. This creates a subtle but powerful background anxiety, the feeling that time is somehow slipping through your fingers faster than you can manage it. But the reality is much less dramatic than it feels. Most successful life paths are not linear. They are messy. They include detours, career changes, wrong fits, periods of stagnation, moments of complete uncertainty. Your 20s feel confusing partly because you're living inside the experimental phase of adulthood, but culturally, it often gets framed like a performance phase, and those are two very different psychological environments. Section 5. Your brain is still rewiring. There is also a biological reality most people underestimate. Your brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, responsible for long-term planning, emotional regulation, and decision-making, continues developing well into your mid to late 20s, which means something important. You are being asked to make life-shaping decisions with a brain that is still optimizing its executive systems. This is not a flaw. It is simply human development. But it helps explain why your early 20s can feel especially turbulent. Emotions run strong. Certainty comes and goes. Confidence fluctuates. Priorities shift faster than expected. And what feels like inconsistency is often just neurological maturation unfolding in real time. By the late 20s and early 30s, many people report something subtle but noticeable. The fog begins to thin, not because life becomes perfectly clear, but because internal stability increases. Section 6. The hidden grief of leaving your old life behind. One of the quietest sources of confusion in your 20s is something rarely named. You are grieving versions of your life that will never happen. Every time you choose a path, a career direction, a city, a relationship, you are also closing the door on countless alternatives. And the human mind is strangely sensitive to unrealized potential. There is a low-grade emotional weight that comes from paths not taken, identities not explored, timelines that didn't unfold. But because this grief is abstract, most people don't recognize it for what it is. It simply feels like restlessness, like something is slightly off, like there should be more clarity than there is. Your 20s are not just about building forward. They are also about quietly letting go of infinite possibilities. And psychologically, that takes time to metabolize. Section 7. Why stability feels so far away. Many people enter their 20s expecting that stability will arrive quickly, that after a few decisions, things will lock into place. But modern adulthood has stretched the timeline. Careers are less linear, housing is less stable. Relationships form later, economic pressure is higher, geographic mobility is greater. In previous generations, stability often arrived earlier because the system itself was more rigid. Now, flexibility is higher, but so is prolonged uncertainty. So when your life in your mid-20s still feels fluid, unsettled, or in transition, you are not late. You are living inside the new normal. Section 8. The quiet turning point most people miss. Here is something rarely talked about. For many people, clarity does not arrive in one dramatic breakthrough. It accumulates quietly. Through repeated experience, small failures, pattern recognition, slow self-understanding. Somewhere in the late 20s or early 30s, many people notice something subtle. They react less dramatically. They second-guess themselves less often. They recover from uncertainty faster. They understand their own patterns more clearly, not because life suddenly became simple, but because they have gathered enough data about themselves to navigate more calmly. Confusion in your 20s is often the data-gathering phase for wisdom that only makes sense later. Section 9. What to do while you're in the fog. If your 20s feel confusing right now, the goal is not to eliminate uncertainty overnight. The goal is to move intelligently within it. A few quiet principles help more than most people expect. 1. Treat this decade as a testing ground, not a final exam. Experiments reduce pressure. Permanent decisions increase paralysis. 2. Build skills, not just plans. Skills travel well even when plans collapse. 3. Reduce unnecessary comparison exposure. Your nervous system was not designed for global life comparison every morning. 4. Expect identity shifts. Who you are at 23 will likely not match who you are at 29, and that is healthy. 5. Focus on direction, not perfect clarity. You do not need the full map. You only need the next intelligent step. Section 10. The reframe that changes everything. Your 20s are not confusing because you're behind. They are confusing because you're in the most neurologically, emotionally, and structurally transitional decade of modern adult life. You are building identity, testing environments, recalibrating expectations, learning your own patterns, and adapting to a world that changes faster than previous generations experienced. From the inside, that feels like chaos. From the outside, years later, it often looks like necessary construction. If your 20s feel uncertain right now, if the path ahead looks foggy, if it seems like everyone else got the manual except you, take a slow breath. Confusion in this decade is not a sign that life is off track. Very often, it's a sign that real adulthood is quietly under construction. And most people only realize that after the fog begins to lift. If this helped reframe how you see your 20s in a way that finally makes sense, consider subscribing to the Old Soul's Guide. And if this message needs to sit with someone else, share it with them. See you in the next one.